In a shocking and unexpected move, on April 30th, Africans from every corner of the motherland and the diaspora will converge in unprecedented numbers, their voices united in a thunderous roar of solidarity for Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré.
Breaking news. Chaos is erupting across Africa. Streets are flooded with angry protesters. Smoke rises above capitals. Governments are on edge. And at the center of it all, Ibrahim Traoré, the controversial leader of Burkina Faso, has survived yet another assassination attempt. This marks the second attack on his life in just months, and this time, the fallout is exploding far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. From Bamako to Ouagadougou, from Niamey to Kinshasa, tens of thousands have taken to the streets. Some rally in support of Traoré, hailing him as the last hope against neo-colonialism and foreign military influence. Others rage against the instability and violence that continues to plague the region under his rule. Military convoys are being ambushed, embassies are being evacuated, and state media channels are going dark.
This is how you know this is the greatest president they ever lived. They having a mega rally all over the world. Everybody is supporting Ibrahim Trio. You hear me? We gonna be live in Dallas City Hall on the 30th, man. I'm not playing with these people. Boy, I'm about to put on my red, my black, my green, and we about to take to the streets, and we gonna be the real ninjas that we supposed to be.
What happened in Libya to Gaddafi must never ever happen again to an African in Africa. Leave Captain Ibrahim alone. Leave Africa alone. I start with Burkina Faso.
We're witnessing what could be the most dangerous escalation yet in a continent already under extreme pressure. From political coups to economic unrest, climate migration, and deepening foreign entanglements. So, what exactly happened in this latest attempt on Traoré's life? Who was behind it? And why has this sparked mass protests across multiple African nations? In this video, we'll unpack every detail of this breaking story, from eyewitness accounts to intelligence leaks, and explain why what's happening today may alter the future of African power, resistance, and revolution. Traoré's narrow escape sparks a continent-wide firestorm. The attempted assassination of Burkina Faso's transitional president, Ibrahim Traoré, in early April 2025, has set off a chain of chaos that's rapidly spreading across West and Central Africa. Though Traoré narrowly escaped the plot, allegedly orchestrated within his own military, the repercussions of the attack have gone far beyond a mere political crisis in Burkina Faso. The event sparked a continent-wide explosion of protests and unrest, marking a significant turning point in regional dynamics.
Africans are organizing, mobilizing, and preparing to make history. These protests are not just a defense of Captain Traoré. They are a clarion call to African leaders to emulate his courage, reject foreign domination, and prioritize their people. The audacity of Burkina Faso's young leader has struck a chord, and the ripple effects are leaving corrupt African elites quaking in their imported suits, their ill-gotten wealth no longer a shield against the tidal wave of public fury. The latest assassination attempt on Captain Ibrahim Traoré, reported on April 21, 2025, was not an isolated incident.
As the news of the assassination attempt spread, it wasn't met with shock or indifference, but with intense fury. In Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, thousands of young people took to the streets, rallying behind Traoré. They waved flags, denounced imperialism, and chanted slogans of solidarity, portraying the president as a symbol of resistance against foreign influence. This wave of anger soon surged beyond Burkina Faso's borders, with protests erupting in neighboring countries like Niger, Mali, and even Cameroon. The demonstrations quickly escalated, with citizens storming government buildings, clashing with security forces, and calling for the ousting of foreign puppets and local traitors. The scenes in Niamey, Bamako, and Douala mirrored those in Ouagadougou, where a growing anti-imperialist sentiment fueled the unrest. The atmosphere in the region grew increasingly volatile, as demands for the removal of Western influence and the pursuit of greater sovereignty dominated the streets. What began as a national crisis has now become a full-fledged regional upheaval, threatening to reshape the political landscape of West and Central Africa. Coup after coup, a growing trend with no signs of slowing. It didn't take long for political analysts to draw a pattern. The assassination attempts on Traoré marked the fifth such attack on a Sahelian military leader in the past year. The region, once known for its post-colonial dreams, has become a battlefield between homegrown nationalist regimes and the ghosts of colonialism. The Sahel has seen Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and Niger all fall under military control in just a few years. Each time, Western allies were kicked out, and soldiers draped in fatigues declared themselves as guardians of national sovereignty. Traoré, who seized power in a 2022 coup, has become the poster child of this new order. His popularity among the youth is sky high, not because of polished politics or economic miracles, but because he speaks the language of resistance. When foreign military bases were shut down and new ties with Russia emerged, many young Africans didn't see betrayal. They saw liberation.
Funeral for Pope Francis set for Saturday, April 26 in front of St. Peter's Basilica. Amid mass killings, the growing insecurity, National Assembly postpones resumption to May 6, citing preparations for Workers' Day celebrations. And Burkina Faso falls, major coup attempt, alleges spotters came from Côte d'Ivoire.
And when bullets flew toward Traoré again in April, the youth didn't just protest, they mobilized. Across African capitals, pro-Traoré demonstrations turned violent, targeting embassies and NGOs accused of sowing instability. In Togo, protesters stormed a French cultural center. In Senegal, crowds clashed with riot police outside UN offices. The assassination attempt became a trigger, not a lone political event, but a symbol of deep-seated frustrations, an anti-imperial uprising or regional chaos. The question haunting diplomats in Paris, Washington, and Brussels is this: are these protests an organic movement demanding African autonomy, or are they spiraling out of control into dangerous regional destabilization? There's no easy answer.
30th of April 2025, Africans in London joined a global uprising, marching shoulder to shoulder with millions across the continent and diaspora to defend Burkina Faso's captain Ibrahim Traoré. This is no ordinary protest. It is a rebellion against a new wave of Western interference, sparked by US General Michael Langley's reckless threat to arrest Traoré for daring to control Burkina Faso's gold. Africans are done watching their heroes fall. This time, they are standing tall. Muammar Gaddafi, Thomas Sankara, visionaries who dared to defy the West, betrayed by silence and left to die. Gaddafi's Libya, once Africa's beacon of prosperity, is now a war-torn shadow. Sankara's dream of self-reliant Burkina Faso was crushed. Africans let them down.
What's clear is that these uprisings are more than just street demonstrations. Protesters are tearing down old political norms, rejecting multi-party elections as Western impositions, and supporting military-led regimes as the only solution to decades of corruption and misrule. This mindset is gaining traction, particularly among the under-35 demographic, a group that represents more than 60% of Africa's population. In Burkina Faso, students from Ouagadougou University lit a bonfire in the middle of the campus and held an all-night vigil, waving Russian and Pan-African flags. Meanwhile, in Mali, hundreds marched on the airport, demanding the final expulsion of remaining UN personnel. Slogans like "Africa for Africans," "Down with ECOWAS," and "Traoré is our Mandela" were painted across city walls. The symbolism was clear. This is not just about Burkina Faso. It's about redefining what African leadership should look like. Proxy politics, Russia, France, and the new scramble. International observers can't ignore the increasing signs of a new Cold War dynamic. Traoré, along with leaders in Mali and Niger, have signed defense agreements with Russia and invited mercenary outfits like Wagner into their security architecture. In return, these countries expelled French forces, canceled military cooperation with the United States, and removed journalists who were seen as hostile to the new order.
Burkina Faso's leader, Ibrahim Traoré, survived a deadly assassination plot, and now, Russian commandos are on the ground to protect him. But why would Russia intervene in such a delicate situation? Do they have a common enemy? Let's find that out. The political instability in Burkina Faso has reached a critical point, with a series of threats aimed directly at President Ibrahim Traoré's life and leadership. The recent failure of a major coup plot underscores the fragility of the situation. In response, Traoré has opted for a drastic measure: the deployment of Russian special forces to safeguard his regime and protect key government figures.
Russia has benefited immensely. The visibility of Russian flags during the protests was no accident. It was intentional. In Burkina Faso, Russian advisors have been spotted inside military command centers. In Niger, a new Russian military training facility is under construction. Moscow is being welcomed not merely as an alternative partner, but as an ideological ally. And it's paying off. Young protesters aren't shy about saying they trust Putin more than Biden or Macron. Western countries, by contrast, are rapidly losing ground. The European Union has issued repeated statements condemning the deteriorating human rights situation in the Sahel. But these words fall on deaf ears. When the French ambassador to Burkina Faso was expelled in late 2024, Paris protested. But Traoré doubled down, declaring the ambassador persona non grata and accusing France of backing dissident soldiers. Whether or not France had anything to do with the April 2025 assassination plot, its name was on every protester's lips: jihadist exploitation amid the power vacuum. As political tensions escalate across the Sahel, jihadist groups are expanding their influence with alarming speed. Following the assassination attempt on Burkina Faso's president, extremist factions launched coordinated attacks on military outposts in the eastern regions, killing dozens of soldiers. Jihadist radio broadcasts even hailed the failed assassination, framing it as a sign that God is with the Mujahideen, further emboldening their cause.
Burkina Faso's president orders mass arrests after assassination attempt. What sparked the crackdown? The smoke had barely cleared from the April 16, 2025, assassination attempt on Captain Ibrahim Traoré when the crackdown began. In the pre-dawn hours of April 18th, armored vehicles rumbled through the streets of Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou, as elite units loyal to Traoré stormed military barracks, government offices, and private residences.
This surge in violence couldn't come at a worse time for Burkina Faso. The military, already stretched thin by internal conflicts and the constant threat of terrorism, is now engaged on multiple fronts. While the withdrawal of Western forces has left a vacuum, the presence of Wagner mercenaries offers only temporary relief, insufficient to halt the rising tide of extremism. In northern Mali and parts of Niger, jihadist groups are launching near-daily ambushes, often sharing the footage online to intimidate local populations. Civilians are paying the price, with hundreds of thousands displaced and refugee camps overcrowded. In Niger's Tillabéri region, local leaders are witnessing the collapse of the entire security apparatus. With state forces overwhelmed and extremist groups gaining ground, the region faces a rapidly deteriorating security situation. The combination of internal instability and external threats is pushing the Sahel towards a deeper crisis. Civilian life in freefall. With roads barricaded, cities locked down, and government services stalled, daily life for millions has turned into a grind of survival. Markets are half empty. Internet blackouts are routine. Schools in conflict zones are shuttered. In Burkina Faso's north-central region, mothers carry children's miles to reach overburdened clinics with no medicine.
Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, once said something very kind and powerful about women and childbirth. He said he wants every woman in Burkina Faso to give birth for free, without paying any money. He asked a very important question: why should women be charged to bring life into the world? He said that since every person is born from a woman, we should respect and help women, especially when they are having babies. He shared something very personal too. He said his own mother almost lost him at birth because she could not afford to pay the hospital bills. If it wasn't for God's help, he might not be alive today, and he would not have become president. That's why he feels so strongly about making childbirth free. He wants no mother to suffer or lose her baby just because she doesn't have money.
The economic fallout has been brutal. Inflation is skyrocketing. Foreign investment has dried up. Entire regions are becoming ghost zones, with farmers abandoning fields and traders avoiding highways known for kidnappings. Yet, in the face of all this, many citizens remain defiant, not just of the government, but of any outside influence. The logic is harsh but clear. We've lived with foreign help for decades, and we're still poor, still unprotected. Why not try something else? This sentiment is the fuel powering the protests, and why they're not fading. ECOWAS and the African Union, paralyzed giants. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, is witnessing a sharp decline in its influence, particularly among its military-led members. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have turned their backs on the regional bloc, forming a new coalition called the Alliance of Sahel States. This move signals their rejection of ECOWAS as a legitimate platform for addressing their security and political concerns. Mediation efforts have been ignored, and sanctions imposed by ECOWAS have only fueled anti-Western sentiment and strengthened the resolve of the Sahel trio.
Summary, and we have to look at the data first and foremost to understand what this means. As you know, intra-regional trade within ECOWAS member states is about 12% of the entire trade volumes of ECOWAS member states. So if you're doing a valuation of about 30 to 35 billion US dollars, which are the estimates from the African Development Bank, you have to understand what this means when you have additional levies of 0.5% or more. Now, you also have to put into context that 60% of the intra-regional trade is actually carried out by small retail traders. So your usual provision store owners on the border towns in Libya between Nigeria and Niger, or the border towns, for instance, between the Nigerian border and that of Benin. And that's the same for the borders between Mali and Burkina Faso and Ghana, or Mali and other countries in the region. So if 60% of your intra-regional trade is actually borne by these small retail traders, an initial bump in these levies basically means that there will be an increase in hidden taxes, what we would like to call as hidden taxes, and the consumers are going to feel it.
Similarly, the African Union, AU, has found itself sidelined. Its appeals for dialogue are dismissed as externally influenced, and its lack of military capability and limited diplomatic leverage render it ineffective in the face of growing instability. Rather than acting as a regional stabilizer, the AU has been reduced to a bystander in the region's rapidly evolving crisis. The Sahel Alliance is now exploring deeper integration, including the creation of a common currency, a unified military command, and joint media operations. These efforts mark a significant break from traditional regional governance structures and suggest the emergence of an alternative power bloc that rejects the authority of ECOWAS and the AU. Where this could go next? The worry now is what happens when another assassination attempt succeeds. What happens when these protests turn into revolutions, or worse, civil wars? What happens when jihadist groups push further south toward major cities in Ghana or Côte d'Ivoire? And what if Wagner decides to go from contractor to kingmaker? The assassination attempt on Traoré may have failed, but the unrest it unleashed has only just begun. What started as a gunfire exchange in one West African capital has become a pan-African reckoning. The young are rising, the old orders are crumbling, and foreign powers are scrambling to understand the new map of influence. Whether this ends in a new pan-African revival or a descent into warlordism depends on what happens in the coming weeks. One thing is certain: Africa is changing, and it's doing so on its own terms. This is not just a national crisis, it's a regional reckoning. Ibrahim Traoré's latest brush with death has ignited something far bigger than Burkina Faso. The protests we're seeing are not isolated, they're interconnected signals of a continent on the edge. Young people demanding a future free of military takeovers. Old elites clinging to power. Foreign actors manipulating both sides. And in the middle, leaders like Traoré, symbolic to some, toxic to others, standing in the eye of a storm they may no longer control. Will Traoré survive the next attempt? Will the protests spark a new movement or plunge more countries into military crackdowns and unrest? This isn't just news. It's a geopolitical firestorm in real time, and the next 48 hours may decide the fate of an entire region. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We're tracking this minute by minute, and let us know in the comments, is Africa heading toward a wave of revolution or into deeper chaos?